Hey everyone, Hammeh here. A little bit of bad or sad Overwatch lore news for you today. First Strike, the graphic novel we've all been looking forward to, has been cancelled. First Strike was going to tell us how Overwatch was founded during the Omnic Crisis. It's a real chunky part of the lore and story that a lot of people, myself included, were really looking forward to. I had a few concerns on this for a while. First Strike was on the radar since before launch in March 2016. A partnership with Dark Horse and release dates were announced in July 2016 at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was confirmed as releasing digitally in November of this year. But then it was totally absent from BlizzCon 2016 early this November. That seemed to be a pretty big beat of the story missing, so got a little bit concerned. It did seem weird that it had gone silent, but its fate was confirmed on the Blizzard forums today, mid-November. Posting on the official boards, Michael Chu, lead on writing or story on Overwatch, said that it was mainly due to the story being taken in a different direction. There's a few interesting things that we can speculate on from the post, but here's what it said to start with. The original idea for the graphic novel dates back to the early days of the game's development and came from a desire to tell the story of the founding of Overwatch during the Omnic Crisis. In the years since First Strike's conception, we have done a lot of development on the universe and its stories. While the core of this story remains, we have changed and expanded upon how we see the events that took place during the first days of Overwatch. So for now, the early adventures of Gabriel Reyes, Jack Morrison, Anna Amari, Reinhard Wilhelm, Torbjorn Lindholm and more wait for another day. But we know that this is a story you're excited about and it's one we still plan to tell. I'd like to thank everyone for the enthusiasm, passion and support you've shown towards the Overwatch universe. We have a number of stories in development that will delve deeper into the world and its heroes, and we can't wait to share them with you in the coming months. Okay, so a few interesting inferences I'm going to speculate on from that. Firstly, it seems that First Strike was in planning from the early days of the game's development, even if it was from when Project Titan got switched into the Overwatch we know today. Game development's not a quick business for a title like this. That's probably years ago that this project started in some form or another. That's a long time ago for a story idea to be nailed down. Given that we were still expecting this novel 3 months ago, it's got pretty close to the wire before being cancelled. So to cancel what must have been presumably a close to complete project is a really big decision by Blizzard. However, if the core of the story has changed and expanded, as Chu mentioned in the post, I can begin to see why this may have happened from recent story elements we've seen. Here's a hypothetical example. To write First Strike, you need to pick an original cause, probably of the first Omnic Crisis. Now, if this was picked years ago, the project's been written externally and moved ahead on that basis, then ideas change. Blizzard get to see the fans' response to the story as the game's launched. Overwatch has ballooned in popularity. That's a great thing. And people have got really passionate about the story. Blizzard, as a result, may have taken a look at that and decided to pick some new ideas or directions. Now, Overwatch's story in itself has a lot of moving parts and questions. Here are just a few off the top of my head. What caused the first Omnic Crisis? What were all of the characters that we know who were alive at the time doing around the events of it? What then caused the second Omnic Crisis in the present day of the timeline? Was it the same reason or a different reason to the first? What caused the downfall of Overwatch? How did the older characters tie together with the younger or new generation, D.Va, Lucio, etc.? Will they ever do so? And so on and so on. For First Strike to be started, or to start any writing or comic project, at least one of these has got to be set. You've got to say, choose the reason for the first Omnic Crisis. Now, the problem with that is that any story then told about Overwatch after the first Omnic Crisis has to go along certain lines. The first Omnic Crisis story is so key to Overwatch's whole universe, it almost has a limiting effect on where you go in future. It's the origin story of the world in so many ways. If you decided to release a project where you weren't happy with some of the directions, the only way out of it would be to retcon, retroactive continuity. Do a bit of writing that introduces new information to change stories, direction, or perhaps repair any inconsistencies or problems as you go along. This is a very normal process in dramas, soap operas, and long-running stories of any kind that you'll have read in books, watched on TV, or even played in games. StarCraft and Warcraft, as long-established universes, have had this happen to them on occasion. Writing a whole universal world really isn't easy. We got to remember that from time to time. Now, I mentioned earlier that I can see why Blizzard have done this, and there's one other thing that feeds into this. SOMBRA's connections images in SOMBRA's Origins trailer. Without jumping too far ahead of myself, those really feel, as I've discussed in the video I did on it, link below, like a new story blueprint. We can see more defined connections. It's quite a new asset, so one can assume that hopefully it's not going to be gone back on too quickly, and it looks like the framework of a new story for the present day of Overwatch that could be built on in a lot of different ways. So my gut feeling, no proof, is that whatever story was being told in First Strike, it's probably become too restrictive narratively based on how Blizzard now want to tell the story of Overwatch. And as a result, Blizzard are perhaps replacing it in the present day of Overwatch's timeline with this story blueprint, and we can expect to see more for the present day around this. So what of the pages we've seen so far? Of Morrison and Reyes fighting in the ruins of the Detroit Omnium, of what looks like to be the Overwatch strike team hitting an Omnium in the snow, of a mysterious individual inside the ruins of an Omnium, and a whole group of people clustered around what look to be blueprints for Crusader armour, or something similar to it, as Reinhardt has a flashback. Well, we don't have to give up on these just yet. Who knows, maybe they'll be part of the story in future, maybe they won't. I'm reassured though that even though we won't be getting First Strike right now, Chu ended the post with saying that there's at least a number of stories that are being worked on. We've had a great bit of story and lore with SOMBRA's release, and that the Overwatch original strike team story is still going to be told, so really looking forward to that. Thanks for tuning into this quick news update and a few thoughts about Overwatch's story and also First Strike sadly being cancelled. Hero Lore, Interactions and Voice Lines return next week. If you've not seen that series so far, do check it out in the playlist here. I was working on Lore Bites for today, but then this news came up. That's going to be released over this weekend, and do check out all of my other Overwatch Lore videos where I explore the universe, maps, heroes, lore concepts, theory, and so much. I've got no end of Overwatch lore topics and thoughts to explore in the future as well. Any other Overwatch lore topics or questions you'd like to see me try answer or cover, do let me know too. I'd love to hear about it. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.